Daggerheart is the new RPG from Critical Role and Darrington Press, and we're going to learn it, or see how to teach it, in just 5 rooms. Daggerheart is a lot of fun as a role-playing game. I just finished playing a level 6 rogue on the D20 Play channel, link down below, and the game is pretty different. So there are a number of things that when we're trying to teach this RPG, it might seem a little intimidating or off-putting, and having an easy way to teach people is really helpful. So in this video, that's what we're going to do. We're going to use 5 rooms to teach the core parts of what a player needs to know about the Daggerheart RPG, so that you know what to do with like your domain cards and other different things like no initiative that are in the game. So this will be a method you can use either to learn the game yourself by watching this video, or you can emulate this approach, even take the concepts that are in it and the little adventure that's in it, and use this as a way to run it for your players and get them on board with playing this new game. If you've seen my recent videos, you know the 5-room Learn to Play concept. It breaks in the different parts of the game step by step so that you're not learning the whole thing all at once in a complicated adventure that's full of a lot of different components. The components are segregated. So we're going to do 5 rooms. The first room is going to teach us how to use skills in the game of Daggerheart. Then the second room will be an easy, fun fight. Then we're going to do a role-playing or negotiation scene. We're going to showcase in step 4 some additional gameplay. In this case, I think we'll do resting. And then we'll have a thrilling boss battle to end it all, provide a good, satisfying finish. So this is the process we're going to use. And the map you can see down below is a Dwarven Forge build from their Caverns Deep Kickstarter. I love that set, and so I've kind of inverted the rooms and moved them around and numbered them from 1 to 5. Premise-wise, what we're going to do here is we're going to say something really simple, and you could change this to be a lot of different things, but there has recently been some cult activity, and apparently these cultists are seeking something in the nearby hills by whatever town or city you live in. They are seeking some lost knowledge, some magical power that they believe is there that'll help them to do all their nefarious deeds. Depending on what kind of arc you're creating, that's good enough, or you could tie it into larger plans you have for later. But, cultists are up to bad stuff, and you were hired, maybe they were informants, something like that. You've been hired by the folks of this town or city to beat them to it, basically. Go out into the hills, find the caves and whatever is in there, either neutralize anything that would be dangerous and used by them, or bring it back if it's just treasure or something like that. They're not sure what it is, but they want you to check it out and bring it back. They have heard some stories about wizards that lived in the caves and things like that. So there could be a lot that's magical, dangerous, cursed, things like that. So off you go into the hills, following maybe some old maps they have, and you start checking out different caves. Night draws near and you find a cave and you figure, well, we'll check this cave out, and if there's nothing there, we'll sleep. So you're there. You don't find anything unusual in the cave, and you get ready to bed down for the night when, and here our adventure begins. As I talked about before, we would probably want to use pregens here, though, as I'll show in a separate video, making a character in Daggerheart is actually pretty easy, especially if you're using the demiplane interface. But the book as well is really good at walking you through the process and making level 1 characters. The hardest part really is just that it's cool. It's got a lot of neat ideas in the process, and so you may want to think about it a lot. So that's where, if you're trying to just teach the game, character creation will probably suck up some time as the players are thinking through their options. So probably what I would do is create some easy pregens that you think are pretty straightforward, provide those level 1 pregens to the players, and then focus on the adventure. After you get through this 5-room experience, that's where you'd say, okay, was that awesome? If you liked it, hey, let's go back and make new characters or refine the character you had. And that way we can really go and start a campaign and do a larger experience. But here, I'm going to assume that there's just a couple of pregens. And you watching the video, you could pretend you're one person at this table the DM is running. And you're learning, but imagine there are several other people, 4 or so other players at the table also learning. So anything that I say, imagine we're doing that like times 4, right? Maybe or 4 more times. There might be 5 total people learning to say make skill checks, right? So all these things that I'm going through, get reinforced because you do it like 4 or 5 times, depending on how many players you have at the table, which helps everybody really learn the rules as everybody goes through it. All right, so let's go into it with skills. Someone asked for one of the previous videos how starting with room 1 being skills figures into the advice we often hear, such as from Mike Shea of Sly Flourish, to have a strong start for an adventure. A strong start, such as a combat at the beginning, can really wake us up, get everybody excited, and it's possible to combine that with skills. The reason that skills I often think of as being lower pressure is because that's a really nice, relaxed way for players to learn it. But it's true that we want high interest. So a way we could combine this, right, is you bedded down for the night in this cave where you're getting ready to, when all of a sudden there is a tremor. It builds, increases in potency and strength, and dust starts to fall, small rocks fall. And it's at that moment that you see that outside, large boulders are rolling down outside of the cave. And inside, behind you at the back of the cave, the wall begins to collapse, revealing a tunnel of worked stone leading into the mountain. Where do you go? What do you do? So that can be an exciting start, but all of this will be about skill checks and learning those basics in that manner. This also could give a choice. The way I've explained it so far, you could choose, do you want to run outside, do you want to run inside? A way to vary that is, you see the front collapse, so you can't go outside and find an alternate entrance in after this cave-in ends. You have to go inside. So let's assume you do that. You want to do a little more linear adventure for new players to kind of more easily start. So they see these large boulders falling outside. That looks super dangerous. The whole cavern is shaking, and behind them, they see this opening come down. But there are still sections of the walls kind of falling. There are rocks that are, the size of your fist that are falling. What do you do? And here is where the players get to make some choices and learn about what their character sheets do. So Daggerheart is fun because it does not have skills in the usual sense that, say, Dungeons and Dragons does, or even Shadowrun or Night's Black Agents, other games like that have a skill list or even a skill list that you make up. Daggerheart has what's called experiences as a way to reflect the kinds of things that you know based on things that happened to you in the past. So when I made my level 6, and I'll just show the character sheet, on the character sheet, experiences are right here. So that, again, as with skills, it is in one block, the character sheet, which makes that really nice because we can just point to that area and say, hey, you have experiences. And if we made these pre-gens, we can set them up so they have a few relevant ones, right? So for example, maybe somebody has the experience Dungeon Explorer, or somebody has, Trail Guide. Someone else might have something like I Don't Give Up, right? That's one that my character had. And so we can point out, hey, look at your experiences and see whether anything there seems to apply. And if you at all think it does, I will probably agree, but I have the final say. So take a look and decide what you think. In addition, your character sheet has this zone right up here, which are your traits, or what in Dungeons & Dragons we'd call ability scores. In this case, they're like the pluses that come from, or the minuses that come from your kind of the way your character's built. So they're just modifiers. And those have different things like agility involves sprint, leap, maneuver. Strength is lift, smash, grapple, right? So we'll say you can tell me what you want to do, and your experiences possibly could help, right? So someone might say like, oh, I have this Dungeon Explorer experience. I want to use that to know whether I think this tunnel is going to be safe, right? And so that's the kind of thing where we'd say, okay, make me a check, roll, and in this case, this is sort of knowledge. So I would say roll your knowledge trait, and you get to add plus, and depending on the character sheet, it's probably going to be +2 in this case, because that's how your experiences start. +2 because you have this Dungeon Explorer trait that helps you. You've been in caverns and stone halls that lead in various places. So make me that roll, right? So now that the player is engaged, and the player now is going to make that check. To make the check, you're going to roll your Duality dice. And this is a key part of Daggerheart. The Duality dice are 12-sided dice. So you're going to take that not quite roundest of dice that you have, the D12, not the D20, and you're going to roll 2 of them. And you want them to be of different colors so that it's pretty obvious to you and ideally to everybody there what is hope and what is fear, because those are the 2 duality dice. So maybe I say, okay, my rainbow die, that is going to be my hope die. And then I have this golden and black die. That is going to be my fear die. And I roll both of them and I look and see what I got. And what you do is you're going to add them together for a total. So in this case, I rolled a 10 and I rolled a 5. My 10 was with my fear die. My 5 was with my hope die. The total is 15. And then I add my bonus. So we said we had +2 for being a dungeon explorer, that experience. So the total is a 17. That is above the threshold that the adventure had, let's say, for learning about this tunnel. But in this case, what's interesting about duality dice is when you roll them, you either generate a fear result or a hope result in addition to succeeding and failing. So you kind of get this matrix of 4 results, which is really cool in terms of driving the action and the drama. So in this case, you succeed. You know that this cavern that has been revealed in this kind of old corridor there, it is leading into far older areas of the mountain. It's sloping down sharply. So this could very well be the place that you're looking for. But also, you're pretty sure that area behind you is being sealed off. You'll have to find another way out, right? And that can help underscore the fear aspect. So I kind of colored it there because of the fear result. And now the DM gets to do something with that result of fear. One way you could use that fear result is we could say that a section of the wall starts to cave in as a result of this fear result. And this is a way that we can use to get some more skill checks going. So we say it looks like that part of the wall is going to cave in on you, which would make it hard to leave this area. You might end up being trapped if you can't hold it back or get out really quickly. Is someone willing to try to do something about this? And one of the heroes might say, like, yeah, I will take my shield and I'll push it up against that and try to hold it there and shout at everybody to get out. Awesome. Very heroic. So I would say, great, you're going to use your strength trait to make a check. And maybe the person says, all right, I've got +2 to that. And they might think about using an experience. Now, I didn't say this before, but I would have said it to the player. When you use an experience, that causes you in order to do that, you have to use 1 hope. And there is a part on your character sheet, which we would show, that uses hope. So we kind of have 3 zones we're using: the experiences, the hope, and then the traits over here. So we would say, do you want to use, maybe they say something like, oh, I've got an experience that's, protector of the weak. Could I use that? And I say, yes. Do you want to spend a hope to use your experience? And the player goes, I think I won't. So I'll just make a straight up roll. So I'm going to roll my duality dice, adding my +2 for my strength. And in this case, I get a 5 and a 5. So whenever you roll 2 dice that are the same in Daggerheart, that is a critical hit or a critical success. So this player, regardless, even if this had been 2 2s and the total is just 6, here they rolled a 12. Let's say that was under the difficulty for holding back that wall from falling. Because they rolled doubles, it is a success with hope, no matter whether they met the DC or not, which is pretty neat because this can come up fairly often in the game, creating a lot of drama and excitement. And I would explain that to the players. So awesome. You tell me how you do this that is so incredible. Is it like your strength, right? And just give the player some opportunity to talk about how they shore up this wall. Maybe, in fact, they can even move their shield away because they pushed it back, so far, compressed the dirt. They get to tell me. And the other players rush by into the cavern and into the chamber beyond, right? So that could be a fun way of saying, like, here's how we heighten things with the use of fear off of that first skill result. We made the second one. We got to see a critical hit, which is pretty cool. And now we get into a little bit of this antechamber that is labeled as room 2, if you look at the map down beneath me. But we're not going to get into the combat yet. What we're going to describe here is that you see a bunch of webs throughout the room, and especially in what looks like a passage towards the east. And a passage to the northeast has a door to that area that is a big iron door. But there are all these spider webs in here. And that's where the characters might do the kind of thing of like, I want to see if there's anything hiding in the webs or anything like that. And here we could do that again. So we look at our traits and we point to them saying like, yeah, maybe give me a perceive is under instinct. So give me an instinct check to kind of peer through the webs and see what you find. And again, if they want to burn hope, they could use a hope to add an irrelevant experience. And we'd go through that and see this sort of rolling with hope, critical hits, all of that. When you roll with hope, we talked about rolling with fear. When you roll with hope, so if I roll 2 dice and I get, say, a 7 on my hope die and I get a 2 on my fear die, my total is 9. Let's say my bonus achieves a success. So I've succeeded with hope. In that case, I actually get to add a hope on my character sheet. I get 1 more hope. So if I started with 2 and haven't spent any, I now have 3 hope. Or if I spent 1, I get it right back, which is kind of cool when that happens. And I succeeded, so I can see through the webs and see that there is something up above by that passageway hiding up above. And the other things that we can do as part of these skill checks, and you could add more here, right? Maybe there is like a dead body that they can check out and whatever else you want to put in room 2 to create skills. In doing this, you might either find this out or you could just explain the kind of combinations, right? So you might succeed with hope, as we just did. You might succeed with fear, which we did before. You might fail with hope. So you get a hope, but you did not succeed at that time. And so sometimes we might describe a sort of beneficial thing that happens, even though you didn't succeed at what you're trying to do. And then we can fail with fear. In both of those cases, failing or the fear roll, the GM can do something of interest to threaten the party in some way. And so in this case, there can be an additional complication. Not only did you fail, but maybe, in the previous thing, maybe like everybody has dirt up to their knees, right? And it makes it hard to escape. And you make everybody make checks to actually get out of the room and fight their way out. In this case, so we've succeeded. We've done a bunch of skills. It's time for that fight. Once they, finish up more skills, we're going to go to our second room. So now it's time for our easy fight. And I should mention that the 5-room Learn to Play concept does not require actual discrete rooms where everything is like a room joined by a corridor, right? 5 rooms can be in the forest. They can be... some of the rooms can be in the same room, but there's sort of different scenes that happen and something has changed to take us to the next place. So looking on the map before, 1 was really, we were in this entrance cave and we ran through that corridor. We even made some of the checks for part 1 in room 2 as we look around. In room 2, the monster is going to come out of those webs sort of in the direction of where room 3 is. And it's okay that we're still in the room that we used for some skill checks. Now room 2 becomes the site of the easy fight. And so that's fine. The room concept is really about the scenes and encounters. And so you can think about that skill check ending when they find step 1, room 1 ends, when they see a thing moving up in the ceiling, and now it comes at them for this easy fight. Daggerheart is a fairly new role-playing game. It doesn't have book upon book of monsters, but it's got a number of options for tier 1 fights, including a scorpion, a giant scorpion. And that could be a fun way to reskin it into being a sort of giant spider, which is what I would do here in this case. So you have 1 or more giant spiders that come out of the webs and attack the party. And what this does is allow you to have more reinforcement of the use of duality dice, but with a combat setting. And there are some neat things that are angles to combat that go beyond what you might be doing with traits and skill checks. One thing that's cool is everything we've learned, you get to use again. Everything you heard about duality dice, using experiences still applies, right? So if, I want to say that as a dungeon delver, I've fought a bunch of giant spiders before, I could apply that by spending a hope, apply that experience, and get to add that bonus. The reason that's totally fair is because hope is useful in other ways as well, such as helping an ally by giving them advantage, which is to add a d6. So I might point that out when someone is trying to decide how to spend hope. Hey, you could instead spend a hope to give your buddy an advantage. So let's get into the combat mechanics here, which are quite interesting. The first thing I want to cover is turn order. I think that's a very important thing, especially for players who have played role-playing games before. They may have this expectation of rolling initiative or having a very clear, drawing cards for initiative, something like that declares your action order. And so what's important to say is Daggerheart does not have typical turn initiative. Instead, what happens is you get to tell me, let's say you saw this creature's moving. So you see it, you cry out to your friends, which one of you wants to do something? And you kick off the action. So let's say that you decide to take the first action and you're playing something like a rogue or a ranger or a spellcaster that has some ranged way of attacking. And you say, I want to do a ranged attack against whatever it is, that spider that I'm spotting up in the webs. Awesome, right? You have kicked off the action. Once you finish that action, what happens depends on how you rolled. If you roll with fear or fail, I as GM can take my turn next. And I can even keep going with additional monsters by spending my fear to have other monsters get the spotlight. But it comes off of your initial failure or rolling success with fear. That gives me the turn, right? If I don't go, or if I've finished going, who goes next is up to you guys. And you can do that in any order and even in a row. So you could say attack, succeed with hope, and say, and then I'm going to attack again. And as long as everybody's okay with that, you could go twice in a row, unlike Dungeons and Dragons, where you'd have to wait to the whole next round to take another action. Also, you could say, well, I finished taking, I finished attacking. I look to, the dwarven spellcaster and say, hey, you go for it. And so the, dwarven cleric goes next, and you just get to decide, right? Until you hit fear or rolling with fear or failing, and then the DM can step in and take turns. So that's important part is that turn order, which you might either explain or just as you go have at it. But let's say you're taking that initial attack against the spider. So what do? Again, you're going to use your duality dice, but in this case, it depends on how you're attacking. Are you using one of your weapons? And that's where we'd point out your active weapons on your sheet. Your character sheet has a section called active weapons. It shows what's called a proficiency and what your primary weapon is, and a secondary weapon. Your secondary weapon, it could, first of all, be a shield and not a weapon at all, boosting your defense rather than offense. It could be something like a small dagger that adds to the damage of your primary. You're sort of also attacking with your dagger, which is kind of cool. It's just included in the damage that your primary weapon does. Or your secondary weapon could be an alternative, like I want something for range that I can switch to when I need it. Those weapons are out. Anything else you have, you would have to take what's called stress, mark a stress, to pull out that other weapon in the middle of combat. So you don't tend to do that too much unless you really need to, like you need a ranged weapon, you don't have one. But in this case, I'm going to attack, let's say we're using something similar to my rogue that's right in front of me here, got my character sheet. So I'm going to use my blade, and I'm going to, let's say, throw a dagger at it. So in that case, what I would do is I would use the trait that it says for the weapon. For this particular character, I have actually used presence for it. I make my roll, I make my trait roll, see what the result is. Let's say I succeed with hope, to just do a simple example. So I now will roll damage. Damage will be my proficiency in dice. As a starting character, I probably just have one proficiency. So I roll one die of whatever the size is that's indicated there, and I add a bonus based on the weapon as well. So I've been playing a 6th level character, but let's say it's something like D6 plus 2. I roll that. That's the damage that the monster would take. Now, it may have some features that boost it, and if that applied, I would suggest that to the player. Like my rogue has sneak attack, right? And so I could add more damage, another D6, from being a tier 1 rogue. So that happens, right? You total up your damage. What you now do is you compare that total damage that you did. Instead of like in Dungeons and Dragons deducting it from hit points, that damage is compared to the monster's thresholds. So let's say we've got our giant scorpion. The difficulty is 13. So if you hit a 13 or higher, you have hit it. We roll up our damage and we look at the thresholds, which in this case are 7 and 13. 7 for our giant scorpion pretending to be a spider would be for the major threshold, and 13 would be severe. So 13 and above would deal severe damage. That's 3 hit points worth. Or major would be about 7 and above would be major. That would be 2 hit points worth, and under that would be 1. And so we would take that off of its hit points. In this case, it has 6 hit points. So let's say that you did a major blow in terms of that. You would take these 6 hit points would go down to 4. So that's an important part to understand in Daggerheart. You're not dealing damage directly. You're going to these thresholds. So that keeps damage in these sort of zones that are a little more balanced in some ways, or can be. So that's a neat thing to understand. The Scorpion also has a stress score. So if you can do enough stress damage, which some spells will do, then that could also cause it to be vulnerable, and it starts taking hit points when it takes additional stress damage. All of this could emerge in play, or we could explain a little bit up front. But let's say, so your first character goes, you're playing a character, you deal some damage, it did major damage, so that's 2 hit points to it, and it goes down to 4 hit points. And maybe we tell the players the hit points so that it makes it easier for them to learn it. And now that you rolled success with hope, you gained a hope. So you have 1 more hope that you can use later. And maybe you even spend it to say, I'm going to help my ally, this sorcerer that's going to go next. So now the sorcerer goes and choose spells, right? So they have various cards, domain cards that have spells on them. And an example of a spell that can work is something like Hypnotic Shimmer. Make a spellcast roll against all adversaries in front of you within close range. The range have sort of a feel to them, but they have a translation to feet as well. Once per rest on a success, create an illusion of flashing colors. They temporarily stun the creature, forces them to mark a stress, and while stunned, they can't use reactions and can't take any other actions until they clear this condition. So you could do that. Say, like, I'm going to do this, and now the spider is stunned. And let's say if you succeed at your spellcast check, but let's say I succeeded, but with fear. So my turn ends, and now the GM can go. And that's where the GM could say, okay, you've stunned me, but now it's my turn again. So I will spend fear to end that condition, but I can't go again. So you get to go again. So who goes again? So let's say now the fighter runs up, or the seraph, one of the other characters go, and they would repeat the same process of either attacking with a spell, which might involve making a trait check for spell casting. It might be an attack that is either a type of spell or domain card, or using those primary weapons, and we go through this on the fight. Another thing that would happen is the monster attacking you. So once someone else fails or rolls with fear, now my no longer stunned spider could take an action. And that's where I would roll to hit you. Interestingly, the DM rolls a d20. There's reasons for that, kind of how the game is working. But I would roll and see whether I hit you. And if I do, I would do damage, right? So I would say, I got a 14 to hit. What is your evasion score? And I would show on the character sheet your little evasion score area. And I'd say, okay, if I hit or exceeded that, you are taking damage. Now I roll up my damage for my monster and I say, what does that look like to you? And you would look at your thresholds, just like those monster examples I gave for the giant scorpion having a 7 and a 13. You will have 2 numbers. And this will decide whether you take 1, 2, or 3 hit points worth of damage. So let's say your thresholds are 7, 15 from the armor. You add +1 for your level. So on your character sheet, it would say 8 and 16. So if, let's say that I inflicted 12 points of damage to you, I'm under 15, which would be severe, and I'm over the 8. So it is a medium hit, right? It's a major hit. And that means you are currently going to take 2 hit points of damage. And you could just do that. Take your current hit points. Let's say it's 5. and you would mark down 2 and you would have 3 points left. Or you can mark armor. So an interesting thing in Daggerheart is you have armor that protects you. That armor has a certain number of armor slots you can use to move a step down in the damage. So in this case, because I'm going to take 2 hit points of damage, I could mark off 1 armor, and this would lower me to just taking 1 hit point of damage. Or I could mark 2 armor, and I would take no damage at all. But I would only have a little bit of armor left. But let's say I do that. I mark 2 armor off, and I have no damage that I take, but now I only have 1 armor slot remaining. And this is something that's actually exciting about Daggerheart, as we can explain to our players. You know, what's really cool is you get to mark off this armor and kind of keep on going, but when you run out of armor, life gets very challenging. Ooh. All right, so with this, we've kind of got our basics down, right? We're making attacks, we're seeing how that works, how we apply damage, how these thresholds work. We've been attacked, we're seeing how we can burn our armor slots to take that down a step in the damage, how it damages compared to hit points, and it's different, right? That's important. Characters may have neat powers, like someone may have something they can do to intercept a blow and spend an armor for an ally, or they may have something like the ability to heal with one of their domain cards, right? They use a special card and heal a character, and they regained a hit point, and so that's awesome, right? So all of this would kind of go out in this easy fight. But this is just a single monster or 2, and we would just kind of quickly defeat this so that we feel good. The ideal here, as we've said in the past, you want everybody to at least get 1 turn in combat and do something, try something, get a feel for the rules, get their hands dirty with the combat, right? And so as we've done that, now the foe is defeated, and they can take a moment and examine this area, including the fact that in the chamber below is something interesting. So the party goes into this tunnel, and it's filled with webs, and they find that as they cut the webs or burn them, whatever they do, and they can find that there is a wrapped up body towards the back of area 3. You can just sort of see the number 3 in the image down below. And this is actually a cultist that came in because at the far end, where it kind of rounds out and ends, there is actually a sort of chimney of stone that leads upwards and to another area of the hills. And that's why if we decided that they could have run out in the first scene and not gotten trapped, they could have found this other entrance and come in here. That's fine if you wanted to create different options. But again, we're assuming this linear 1 through 5 experience is just an easy way to teach the game. And so they find this cultist, they find an exit, so there is a way to get out of here. And the cultist is alive. They're wounded, but they are there. And now we can have some role play or negotiation where we talk to this character, right? And this is important because we want any role-playing game experience to include the idea that it's not all just destruction and combat. There are fun scenes where we role play and we think through how to appeal to someone and what we can get from them. Opportunities for players to show their characters' personalities in this kind of way, right? A different kind of way. The cultist is not really looking to help you. They are competing with you. They are devoted to their cause, but they also know they're here trapped in these webs. They're at a disadvantage. And that's where various skills or various trait roles, perhaps with applicable experiences, could convince them to help. They may also have domain cards. The party may have domain cards that are helpful that they can use, to play. These gorgeous-looking domain cards that can do things like, for example, there are cards that allow you to read someone's mind, for example, right? A domain power. So one of the characters may have this and feel awesome as they go, well, actually, you ask them questions, and I'm going to read their mind while they're, whether they respond or not, I'll know the answer, and that's totally awesome too. So the whole point of this is negotiating, role-playing with this cultist to learn more about this place, and that's where they can learn about, well, this place has dormant magic, but as soon as anyone comes in, it's going to activate and respond. And there is a summoning chamber beyond that can summon this horrid creature. And if the ritual's done properly, this creature will be a great danger to the land beyond, ha 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 ha, ha kind of thing. Again, depending on how successful you are at role-playing and getting to learn from them, all of the angles. If we want to make this fun, what we could say is this cultist, as devoted as they are, they maybe have a brother in the city who would be hurt by all of this. And they actually do care about their brother. And that's sort of like their weakness in their resolve for Team Evil and Team Tyrant is actually they do care about their brother. And maybe if they think about it, lots of other people have family members, and maybe they start kind of caving and thinking, yeah, maybe I should reform myself and not be on Team Tyrant. So that could be a fun part of this role player negotiation. So we go through the scene, we get information from this NPC, we've made checks and so on, and now we can move on to our next room. So in room 4, we want to showcase additional gameplay. And we could think about how we want to do this depending on the game. In this case, I think that something that's good to know is to understand the way that resting works in this game, because it involves some interesting choices. And that could be fun to showcase that. So what I might do is something like, and I didn't do this to begin with, but let's make this up right now, that maybe there is like a horrible cold in this cavern. You've been uncomfortably cold the entire time, just like it's freezing here. Things are frost covered. Even the spider was covered in frost. And you would not be able to rest with this terrible cold. But moving into room 4, there is actually lava in the room in the center, kind of this pit. Now it's got a hardened layer because the frost keeps kind of the cold temperature keeps kind of like trying to congeal it. But the fresh lava from below is fighting against it. And so the room is actually quite warm enough that you can rest here, right? So we could signal that kind of thing. And again, this could involve, we could reinforce roles by having people make various trait checks to see what they know about, why this is happening. And the cold is unearthly, magical, arcane kind of thing. But hey, you can rest here. And now we can go through the resting rules. Dagger has some fun rules for what's called downtime. And downtime involves 2 types of rests, which are either a short rest or a long rest. And just as in combat, you're making what are called moves, which are actions or attacks or spell casting. Those are known as moves. In downtime, you're making downtime moves as well. And you have a menu of moves that you can choose from. In this case, what we would do is highlight what's called a short rest. And a short rest is when you stop to catch your breath, taking a break for about an hour. You can, during a short rest, swap out any domain cards you have. So starting players, they'll only have a few of these, but eventually you can only have 5 in your loadout, plus the ones that are like your species and your class. Those don't count against the total, but of the ones that you get to choose from, you have 5 of them that are active, and so you would be able to swap cards out. A way to say this to players is, later on, when you gain more levels, it'll be awesome. You'll have all these cool options, and you can swap them during a short rest. Then you choose from the following list. You can do a move, Tend to Wounds, where you patch up your damage you've taken, and you can clear a number of hit points equal to a D4 plus your tier. So tier 1 for level 1 characters, and then it goes to tier 2 for the next few levels, and 3, and so on. So you can do that to yourself, or you can take this move and do it on an ally. So if you're not hurt, you can help someone else regain hit points. And again, your hit points will be something like 5 at level 1. So you healing D4 plus your tier is a big deal. You even just rolling the minimum will be helpful to you. Clearing stress is very similar. So we didn't super talk about stress, that would come up as characters use their features. A number of domain cards involve stress, as well as character features. For example, the ribbit, which is like a frog-looking ancestry, can attack with a tongue. And if someone was playing a ribbit pre-gen, we would explain that. When you do that, because it's kind of a neat attack that deals a fair amount of damage and can even pull objects to you, you take a stress to use that. You also might take a stress when monsters do things to you, like maybe the poison inflicts a stress from the spider, right? So in this short rest, we get to clear stress as an option. If you take the clear stress move, you again roll a d4 plus your tier. That's how much stress you get back. And you can also do that for an ally. Repair armor, you can describe how you work on, sewing back your gambeson or fixing the dents in your metal armor, or patching it up. And you get armor slots back equal to d4 plus your tier. So that's really important. You can also do it to an ally's armor instead. And then when you prepare, the last move is prepare, and here you gain a hope. if you choose to prepare with somebody else, you each gain 2 hope. So you both prepare together. You say, why don't you and I prepare? Because we, don't need to say, get back hit points, get back stress, or repair armor. So let's gain hope by doing it together, and we each gain 2, so we get more that way. So that's pretty neat. What you find in play is that, well, if you're wounded, you're going to do this, or someone else is going to do this. And where it gets interesting is a particular character, let's say a sorcerer, might burn a lot of stress to power their abilities. So they need to get stress back. But if they spent some armor and were wounded, that's where they need an ally to help them. And this idea that people can help each other is a neat part of this resting mechanic. And so it's fun to see the characters kind of do that. What I like to do during this is to have a little bit of dialogue around your characters, right? So I might say, like, tell me about something that how you're reacting to this during this rest, to what you just went through, and what options you're choosing, and kind of weave a narrative in. And players can get good at this over time, where they say, as I'm working my wounds, I think about how I could have done better in battle, and this makes me think about, something from my backstory. Or, I'm clearing my stress, and I think about, I'm always a hothead. I'm always jumping into things. That kind of discussion helps the party get to know each other. Right? All the players get to know what they're like. And even when they're helping each other, they can do that. I help you in this way, and I'm calming you, or I'm giving you a massage, or I'm telling you a neat story, or singing a song, right? These things can all be part of the characters, the party coming together, which is really cool about it. Long rest is very similar, and we can just tell them that instead of rolling for things like wounds, stress, armor, you just repair all of those slots. All the slots get to be reset, which is really nice. And your hope will reset to actually, that one's the same. You still get 2 hope if you work with others. But you can also work on a project in downtime. So you could have projects that you're involved with, and we can just let them know that. We don't have to get into those rules, but say, like, if this were a campaign, you could also have larger things that you're working on during your long rests, which is kind of neat. Okay, so it's time for our thrilling final battle. We're in the 5th and last room, and as they walk in, there's a door that they can open up, and maybe it's sealed in some way, make some minor checks or focus on it. The seal opens, and when they open it, they feel the whole place just get colder in there. And they let's say there are bones that are spread around the ground, and they start to stir as they sense a living creature has entered and magic within is activating. Now, it's good that they're the ones activating it, and we can tell them this, because if not, it would be cultists activating this. So someone's got to come in and stop it, and they're the ones that are doing it. This power has lain dormant, waiting for bad people to be involved, but you're good people, so time for the heroes. And as you race into that final battle, or that final chamber, you see a summoning circle in there. You see a variety of bones and things like that. And you see a form starting to show up in the middle of that raised area with the summoning circle. Something is beginning to appear in that magic circle. So once again, we jump into combat. The players get to decide what they're going to do, and we want to give them something to fight in addition to what's going on here. So maybe we'll put in some skeletons of various kinds, or other undeads and something like that. They could even be arcane constructs. But we have some foes in here that are somewhat easy for them to fight. And it's important to say the Daggerheart has minions. It has kind of normal creatures. Then it has solos. It has a number of tiers, so you can figure out the difficulty as a whole way that you calculate the encounter difficulty. Not that any player we wouldn't bore our players with that, but just so you watching the video know. And so here I would have some things that are kind of easier to fight, and then maybe something, maybe the boss is the thing that's taking shape there, and it can still act as it's forming and trying to gather power. And this is a neat way to have a thrilling final battle. It's an optional thing we can show off here, but it's a neat way to do it. Instead of just having a normal monster, we can have what's called a countdown. And this uses a clock system, as many other role-playing games do. Games like Blade in the Dark have popularized this, but clocks also show up in Apocalypse World and other games. So we can have a clock, a countdown clock, that is happening when people do things. And you get to define how it works. The rules are on page 102 in the book. So we could say that every time a hero takes a turn, the clock ticks down 1. So can they do enough damage to the bad guy or stop the ritual before they become more powerful? And so I would probably do something like a countdown and have that be a way to make it really thrilling, right? And just let them know, like, there is a countdown in place. You can see that every time you're taking an action, you will see how the power, or every second you see this power coalescing, it's gathering more and more power. Clearly, these things that are in between, the kind of minions or other creatures we've put in, are preventing you from trying to reach the boss. So we go into combat. It's a lot like our easy combat. We're making the same kinds of checks. We're using our domains. We're using our domain powers. We're using our attacks, our class features. And this is a good time, knowing our pregens, anything we missed that we could say someone should use, right? Maybe there's an area of darkness. And so we tell our rogue, hey, you could hide here and use this feature. Maybe we remind our healer that they can do this kind of power, right? Whatever their features are. Or maybe there's something like there's a book that talks about the ritual and remind our ribbit guy, hey, you could probably reach it with your tongue. Oh, yeah, I grab the book and I read what it says, right? Use my tongue to bring the book to me and read it. Maybe grabbing it out of the grasp of a skeleton or something fun like that could be neat. So we're fighting these skeletons. We're fighting the guy in the center, trying to get through the skeletons to deal damage to them directly. And this clock is counting down. And can we defeat the boss before it continues getting power? And I might do something like, every two characters that take a turn, it gets slightly better thresholds and does a little bit more damage, right? That could be an interesting way to do it. So I've not fully formed this concept, but that could be a fun way to make it a thrilling final battle with this countdown. And you see the monster getting stronger as it summons in these energies. Hopefully the heroes are able to stop it. They are able to take out enough skeletons to rush the boss, take it down before it can gather all this power. And maybe we even make some checks to shut down this area, to break the arcane circle, prevent it from summoning. Maybe you can even do that during combat and unwind some of the gains that it has done with the countdown clock. That could be totally cool too, if you want to have skill checks in the middle of your fight. But if not, it would be at the end to shut down this power source, destroy it so the cultists cannot gain anything from it. And this horrible entity that was going to come out and gain its full powers did not. So the city has been saved. We feel really excited. But maybe we reveal that in scraps of tomes and things like that we find in this room, this is not the only place that this kind of power was hidden, and the cultists probably know this. So there are other places and other dangers that involve some sort of prophetic, a prophecy of this these arcane powers that were in fact seeded here for evil entities to use for the forces of tyranny. So now we know that if we want to, if we had fun, we can go on into this next level or into future adventures. The other thing we want to do is have some rewards. So there's probably some neat things like some potions that can restore your stress or hit points. There might be a cool gleaming sword or something like that, right? Depending on what pregens have, we might give them some rewards that let them know, even though they may not play with these same characters, hey, when you play and you have thrilling, awesome stuff, you get some coin, you get a couple handfuls of coins. And we can explain that Daggerheart uses sort of these generic ways of grouping treasure together rather than counting every single piece of currency. So you get handfuls of coin and you get a couple of items that are neat, and how that improves your character to have that. So that becomes like, oh, cool. There'll be neat progress when I'm playing Daggerheart. I'll move up in power and feel good about that, and maybe change up my build. And it is really true because, for example, my level 6 rogue, I got to choose what kind of things I wanted, and I could get a special blade that used their ability score or their trait rather than the trait that's more typical for rogues, because I built a presence rogue. So, that kind of thing is exciting. It's neat. It, rewards all the different kinds of your player brain, right? The kind that wants to have a cool, effective character, and the story angle too, right? Maybe find a fragment of map to the next place so that the explorers in the group are excited about that. So all of this is cool. Hopefully we feel really good about that final battle. And now we're prepared to, say, make our own characters or refine these characters to be more like what we want. And we'll play again after that. So I hope you enjoyed learning to play Daggerheart in just 5 rooms. This hopefully gives you a lot of ideas for what you could do to teach folks Daggerheart and maybe even helped you learn it yourself. So awesome if it did. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful, if you'd like me to change up how I do this. I'm thinking of maybe doing one for Alien or Blade Runner. Maybe there are other RPGs that you'd like to see me do a Learn to Play about in and around my summer plans. Thank you to everybody who makes these videos possible. I really appreciate those who are members of the Patreon community I have at Alphastream. You can go to Patreon, search for Alphastream and find me. Thank you, folks. You make this work possible. And I'll see you next time.